Page 20b, 11 lines from the bottom of the page. איבאי עליהו לדברי האומר נדרים ונדבות אין קרבים ביום טוב, עבר ושחט מאי. So, we dealt in the previous daf with situation with a gift offering, a voluntarily offering, but on a festival. So we ask a question. If someone, yes, we said that we don't do that on a festival. A person brings a offering, a gift offering, a vow offering. We don't do that on a festival. But what do you do if someone already did it? Can you take that offering and use it as a ritual? You sprinkle the blood around the altar, etc., or you rejected it totally. So it's a disputation among the Amoraim, the Talmudic rabbis. רבא אמר, זורק את הדם על מנת להתיר בשר באכילה. So Rava said, guess what you do? You sprinkle the blood, while you do it, you take that offering, and then you do that in order to allow the meat to be eaten on a festival. So we have the idea of ochel nefesh, which is meat on a festival. So in my book, ביאורי הכלומר ברש"י על הש"ס, I explain here a very interesting Rashi. Rashi said, כלומר, אם בשר קיים, שתהא זריקתו צורך יום טוב. So, he said, the centerpiece, why Rashi, I think, meant, when he used כלומר, he said, the centerpiece here, it's not the sprinkling on the altar, taking the blood and sprinkling on the altar. That's not the key point. Al menat, meaning in Ivrit, ba'avur, mipnei, because, which means, that's basically what Rava disagree with Rabba Barav, which means, if you have tzorech Yom Tov, if you have a ochel nefesh, a food that you need to use for Yom Tov, even usually you do not accept gift offering and vow offering. Yet, if it's a situation that someone already did it, guess what? You sprinkle the blood on the altar, and the whole purpose is nothing to do, in a sense, of the offering itself, but the consequences, which is to take that and use it as a basar ochel nefesh, the meat that you eat for the food of the festival. רבא בר אבונה אמר, זורק את הדם על מנת להקטיר הימורים לעבר. No. The reason that you sprinkle the blood, it's for different one. You know why you did it? You need to do it in order to burn the sacrificial part of the animal, including the fat and other portions that are brought upon the altar in the evening. Because that's allowed the entire night, Rashi said. Mai benayu. What's the halachic difference between Rabbah and Rabba bar Avuna? The answer is, Ika benayu nitma basar or she'avad, if that meat became ritually impure or lost, lerava lo zarik, lerabba bar Avuna zarik. So Rava said, wait, the whole purpose is to eat it. If now it's lost or impure, cannot eat it. So don't bother to sprinkle it on the altar. Rabba bar Avuna said, no. The whole idea is this sprinkle, it's called hechsher korban. You pave the way for that offering to be accepted. So therefore you can go ahead and sprinkle. Now we ask a question. How about a lamb for the Shavuot? It is the Torah said that there are two lamb sacrifices, peace offering, that accompany the two loaves of bread. Sheshchatan shelo lishmam. We explained many times that when the Kohen does the offering, he needs to have in his mind for that purpose. So if you have those lamb, and he thought, for example, for the purpose of burnt offering, instead of making them for the purpose of peace offering, so you do not fulfill the obligation of kivsei atzeret, the lamb for the Shavuot, or sheshchatan, or if he slaughtered them, but even he have in his mind that for the purpose of the festival, ben lifnei zmanan, ben leachar zmanam, either before the Chag, before the festival, or later. So he did not fulfill the obligation. So what do you do? הדם ייזרק והבשר יאכל. So you can put the blood on the altar, but since the korban, the offering itself, is kasher, because it's the same category as all the other peace offering, that if you take a peace offering, that you slaughter it not for the purpose of that offering, even you did not fulfill the obligation of the lamb of the festival of Shavuot, yet since it was an offering, a peace offering, so it's accepted. So you can go ahead and use that meat. Ve'im hayta Shabbat. However, if it's slaughtered on Shabbat, lo yizrok, he cannot sprinkle the blood. Why? Because on Shabbat we're not allowed to bake and cook, and therefore he cannot eat that meat, and you are not allowed to sprinkle if it's not the purpose of eating the meat that day. Ve'im zarak. However, if he nevertheless sprinkle the blood, 21, hurtza. Hurtza meaning the offering is accepted. Again, I'm using today again my book. Rashi said here, הורצה על מנת להקטיר, כלומר, ויקטיר אימוריו לערב ולא יקטירם היום. So the Shita Mekubetzet elaborates on that. And he said, what does that mean when he said, הורצה על מנת להקטיר? So he said that על מנת meaning כדי. The whole purpose of its acceptance, it's on the condition that he burned the sacrificial part that he brought on the altar, which is in that sense not al menat leaktir but lehaktir, because the meat is there. So since the meat is there, he sprinkled the blood in order to eat the meat in the evening. That's basically the Shita Mekubetzet. Follow the Rashi here. So he said zarak di avad ein. If he sprinkle after the fact, okay, the korban is kasher, is accepted. Lechatchila, but the way that we wish to, lo, he shouldn't sprinkle the blood since he cannot eat that meat on Shabbat. Bishlama lerava. That's good according to Rava, that allowed to sprinkle the blood only if you allow the meat to be eaten nicha. So we understand it. Ela lerabba baravuna, that he allowed to sprinkle the blood in order to prepare that offering. Kashya. Why we're not allowed to do it on Shabbat? Meaning to go on Shabbat and sprinkle the blood of those lamb festival of Shavuot, since he slaughtered them not for the sake of that offering, only in order to prepare the offering. So they said Kashya, main question. V'baitema, you may say, Shani, Shvut, Shabbat, Mishvut Yom Tov. The rabbinic decree of Shabbat is different from the rabbinic decree of festival. Why? Because what happened is the rabbis are more stringent when it's come to Shabbat versus festival. The rabbis more lenient. Now, be'aminei Ravavya Sava Meravuna. בהמה חציה של נוכרי וחציה של ישראל מהו? ושוחטה ביום טוב. So the question is, the Torah tells us, אך אשר יאכל, פרשת בו. So they said, that applies solely to מלאכת אוכל נפש, to the food that you need for survival in Yom Tov. And we learned earlier, לכם ולא לכלבים, for you and not for the animals, for people who are not Jewish. So basically you don't bake for others. So the question is, if you have animal that have a Jew and non-Jew partner on that animal, what do? Can you slaughter? Can you slaughter if that purpose serve both? Amar le mutar, he said that's acceptable. Amar le v'chima ben zel darim udavot. נדרים ונדבות, which is gift offering and vow offering, you're not allowed to offer them on a festival, right? And here, why is that? Because part of that offering goes to Hashem, which means you have those imurim that you offer them on the altar. So how come you allow them this partnership to take an effect? Amar lei uva parach. So you look at him and he said, uva parach is like you hear a raven. It's a raven flies in the sky. It means that he doesn't pay attention to it. That's the language of the Talmud. He avoid himself to answer the question. Kinafak, when he left, Amar le Rabba Brei, he said to his father, Rabba, son of Ravuna, Lava aynu Rav Avia Savad mishtabach lemar begavei digav Rabbo? Isn't that this Rav Avia Savad that you considering as a great Torah scholar and a great person, and you let him leave like that without giving a proper answer? Amar lei uma avid lei. What do you want me to do? Ani hayom samchuni ba'ashishot rabduni batapuchim. They said in Song of Songs, chapter 2, that it was in a festival. I gave a public speaking. And because of that, I'm too tired, too weak. So, what do you want me to do? And he asked me something that I needed a lot of thought, and I couldn't do it now. I was too overwhelmed with my need. So the Gemara asks, "V'tamamai." What's the reason, the real reason that we differentiate between gift offering and vow offering, between animal that split, half ownership is Jewish and half not? So the Gemara said, "Be'ma chitzah shenochi v'chitzah shel mutar shlochta b'yom tov, ve'ifshar lechazait basar b'lo shchita." You cannot have in an olive bark without going to a process of offering. אבל נדרים דובות אסור שחותם ביום טוב, but those offering, the gift offering and the vow offering, so you cannot slaughter them on the festival. Even the Kohanim has a portion that be eaten. The Kohanim ki zachu mishulchan gavoa kazachu, that when they receive the portion from the table of the Most High, which means the whole offering belongs to God, and those who partake of it are considered guests of God's table. So therefore, a person should not slaughter an animal in a festival for the sake of God. So he said, Amar Rav Chizda, בהמה חציה שנוכי וחציה של ישראל מותר לשלוחתה ביום טוב. די אפשר לחזאית בשר ולא שחיטה, that's what we said. עיסה, חציה שנוכי וחציה של ישראל. But if you have a dough, half and a half partnership, Jew and non-Jew, אסור להפותה ביום טוב, you cannot bake it on a festival, דאי אפשר להמיף לגבל אישה, because you can split it at the time of the preparation, before baking it. So therefore, in order to cook the portion of the Israelite, you do not have to cook the other part, you can split it. So if you didn't split it, it's considering as doing some type of work for the fellow who is not Jewish. So that's not part of what we call a ochel nefesh. Ochel nefesh, you're allowed to do it for certain purposes of that day, but that's not included. The Gemara asks a question from the Mishnah, Tractate Chala, chapter 1. Mativ Rav Chana bar Chanilai, Isat Klavim. David, you have something for you here. It's dough for bread that he meant for dogs. So what happened is, so it's a machloket over there in the Yerushalmi. One talks that it's a dough that combined with mursan, which means that it's not always befitting for human consumption. And the other one said that it's dependent upon the person who creates that dough. Anyway, So they said, אסור לאפותה ביום טוב. You cannot bake it on a festival. די אפשר למפלגה בלישה, you can split it. So he said, he said כלבים, מזמן שהרועים אוכלים. ממנה, when the shepherd eats from that, so they have the same din as a regular bread, חייבים בחלה. You have to spare part of חלה. ומערבים בה, you can make עירובי חצרות, ומשתתפים בה, that's שיתופי מבואות, the same as a regular bread. שיתופי מבואות is like combining alleyways, we explained, the same as a combination of courtyard. ומברכים עליה, you do a מוציא, ומזמנים עליה. זימון, the end of the meal. ונאפת ביום טוב, should cook on a festival, even you don't do a walk on the festival for the purpose of those animals, but since the shepherd also eats it, so therefore, ואדם יוצא בידי חובתו בפסח. Person can fulfill his obligation, and on the first night of Pesach, he needs to eat a olive bark size of matzah, he can use it. So since we said that it can be cooked, can be baked on the festival, why allow? Because it's basically stand for the dog purposes, and you don't do work for those animals on the festival. ואפשר למפלגה בלישה, you can split it, the time of the preparations. Shani said klavim, Gemara said that here is different, since half belong to a non-Jew, הואיל ואפשר לפייסן בנבלה, which means the dogs, sometimes if you bring a dead body of animals, they can give it as a substitute for that dog. So you're allowed to cook it, to bake it, because it's a possibility that it will be eaten entirely by a person, not by animals. So the Gemara rejected that. It said, "Umi it lerav chizda ho'il," that if you tell me that they may have this type of dough for the dogs in a festival, and all of that will be befitting for the shepherd, so it's considering melechet ochel nefesh, the food for survival. Va'it marofim yom tov lechol. If we learn that if someone baked on a festival day for the weekday, so it's a machloket. Rav Chizda amar loke. Rav Chizda said it deserved malkot for desecrating the festival 40. So Rabba amar eno loke. Here the Gemara elaborates on that disputation. רבה אמרנו לו רב חיסדא אמר לו לא אומרים מי הועילו מכלי האורחים חזלי השתנה מחזלי. רב חיסדא said it is a malkot because he holds that we do not say that since the guests happen to visit him, whenever he bakes, he will be feed for him. So now too, רבה אמרנו לו כי אמרי לנו היא. So he said, because we said sins, which means Rav Chizda himself does not accept the principle of sins, ho'il. Why? Because how can it be used, resolve a difficulty raised against him? So they said, אלא לא תימא הואיל ואפשר, אלא כגון דאית לנבלה, דבלה אפשר לפסן בנבלה. So that you use a curse, so they can appease them with that. And that's the situation, that you have that at the time of the cooking. באר מיני מרבונה, הנה בני וגה דרמו לקמחה לבני חילה, those people in a village, that they are Jewish, that the king put an order that they should cook a bread for the armens who are not Jewish, using a flour that belongs to non-Jews. מהו לאפותה ביום טוב? Because we're not allowed to bake on a festival for the purpose of people who are not part of our faith. אמר לו חזינה, we see, איה ולריפתא לינוקה ולא כבדי. He said, we will look if those villages can give bread from the soldiers to a child, and the soldiers are not particular about it. כל חדה וחדה חזיה לינוקה. So result, the soldier are not particular about it, and therefore, v'shari, if the soldiers do not allow anyone else to partake of their bread, so he said, asur, it's prohibited to bake the law for the festival. Tanya, Maaseh b'Shimon HaTimni. Shimon HaTimni is a city Timnat. It's from the book of Judges, chapter 5. Not Temani. Shelo ba'emesh. So, I'm using again my book today. So, yesterday, so Rashi said, Klomar ben ha'arba'im shel Yom Tov. So, the idea is that you see in Chumash Bereshit, in book of Genesis, chapter 31, sentence 29, they said, Ve'elokei avichem emesh amar elai. So, emesh, Unkeru said beramsha. The same Gemarrah in Be'ירוב in Mem Gimel. So, Rashi wants to tell us that it's before the night, which is Ben Arbaim, in twilight. So it's based also in the Gemarrah in Sanhedrin 44b and Megillah 3. Anyway, so he said, Emesh, the Beit HaMidrash. He came in the evening to the Beit HaMidrash, or the eve of the festival. So that's usually, Tosfot Amenut Peret said that that's the time that they discuss the following day. B'shacharit metzor Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, in the morning Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, which was one of the 10 martyrs, he met him in the morning. Omar lo. By the way, the Talmud Torah I learned in elementary school in Haifa, in Israel, was in that street, Ben Bava. Anyway, Omar lo. So Shimon HaTemani said to him, Mipnei ba lo bata emesh lebeit HaMidrash. Why you didn't come yesterday to Beit HaMidrash? Amar lo, baleshet ba leirenu. Baleshet, it was in those days the evil soldiers, they used to come and do a big pogrom and mess and taking loot from us, etc. וביקשה לחטוף את כל העיר. They about to do a mess in a city. ושחטנו להם עגל ופחנו ופטרנו לשלום. So what do we do? On a festival, we slaughter a calf for them, we feed them, they're happy, and they left. אמר לו, טמאי עניים לא יצא שכרכם בהפסדכם. So Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava said, so you get a reward with a big loss. You get the reward that you save your lives from them, or persecution, or who knows what, but you violated the festival. Torah said clearly in the book of Shmot, Parashat Bot, chapter 12, אך אשר יאכל לכל נפש, הוא לבדו יעשה לכם. לכם, meaning to you, ולא לעובדי כוכבים, not for the idolaters. The sense will change it from the non-Jews to idolaters. Anyway, so you should not take this calf on the festival for that purpose. Ve'amai. Why that slaughtering of the calf prohibited according to Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava? Hachazei lemeichal minei. Even Israel is befitting to eat it. So he said, because that calf was from the Israel. Amar Rav Yosef, egel treifa. It was a treif calf. So they slaughter for them, since it's prohibited for eating, so it's only befitting for them. So it wasn't, so therefore it's considering when you're slaughtering that, it's the desecration of festival. So the Gemara said, wait a second, v'achazel klavim, we can feed them the dogs. So now go Tanai. So now is a disputation between the Tanaim. If you're allowed to do certain melachot, certain work for animals on a festival. The Tanya. Again, this pasuk, אך אשר יאכל לכל נפש ולבדו יעשה לכם. ממשמע שנאמר לכל נפש, because the Torah said for every soul, שומע אני, I might derive that what? אפילו נפש בהמה במשמע, that even the soul of an animal, it's included, similar to what we state. כעניין שנאמר, the said in ויקרא 24, מכה נפש בהמה ישלמנה, one who killed the soul of an animal shall be paid, so use the same idea of a soul. Talmud lomar lachem, so then the verse states and emphasizes, for you, 21b, lachem velo לכלבים דברי רבי יוסי הגלילי. So they said that indicating for you and not for the dog, which means you're not allowed to do work on a festival for the animals. That's the word of Rabbi Yossi Aglili. Rabbi Akiva disagreed with Rabbi Yossi Aglili, and he said, "Afilu nefesh behema b'mashma." So that applied, the terminology of souls also applies to animals. You're allowed to do it, a food for the animals on a festival. So then, in Ken Talmud lomar lachem, so I need a sentence for you, the line, lachem velo lovdei kochavim. You do it for you and not for the idolaters. So, and he continued, he said, אמר ראית לרבות את הכלבים, ולהוציא את עובדי כוכבים. Why you add the dogs is an additional part of food that allowed to do on a festival, ochel nefesh, and to exclude the idolaters. Why they are the opposite? So Rabbi Akiva said, מרבה אני את הכלבים שזה נותן עליך. I add these dogs because, like Cyrus, right? Like your dog. You're responsible for your dog, right? So therefore, it's part of lachem, the Sfat Emet said. Because you in a way, you own the dog, you are responsible for him. ומוציא אני את עובדי כוכבים שהם זה נותן עליך. But those idolaters, you're not responsible for them. You're not responsible to feed them, etc. So therefore, the whole idea of allowing ochel nefesh, a food, on a festival, for the purpose of the dogs, it depends upon the disputation between Rabbi Yossi Aglili and Rabbi Akiva. So Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, that prohibited slaughtering of that calf that was trifa, that was keres, even that it was befitting for the dogs, he matched the opinion of Rabbi Yossi Aglili that prohibited. So now we continue with that line of Rabbi Yossi Aglili that said that you should not do work for the animals during the festival. אומר לאביי לרב יוסף ולרבי יוסי הגלילי דאמר לכם ולא לכלבים. That he said, for you and not for the dogs, הני סופלי לחבטה. So how about those small seeds that we have in those dates? So he said, you do it for the animals on a festival. That's considering muktzeh. So if you use that, how are we permitted to cast date stones to animal on festival? Why? Because it's a muktzeh, set aside, and therefore it should not be permitted, it should be prohibited to handle them. So the reason that it's considering muktzeh, most of the rabbis said it's because you cannot use them as the befitting food for animals only if you after the fact. So it's not, you need to prepare, you need to do a process. That's others said it's the whole idea of baking for animals on the festival. Anyway, so the Rambam in the Milchamot have Malach here. Anyway, Amar so Rav Yosef responded to Abaye, and he said, those seeds are not considering muktzeh, ro'il v'chazu la'asaka, since they are fit for fuel. So they may be handled, and therefore they may also be given to animals. So Abaye rejected and he said, Teinach biyabishta. You can say that that's applied to a dry date stone. So, but if you talk about beretivta, the moist ones, which are not suited for fuel, ma'ika lemeima, so it's a muktzeh. So why we throw away even those moist ones to the animals? Amar lei, Rav Yosef responded to Abaye and he said, Chazu le'eseg gadol. When you have a large fire, guess what happened? So there are feet which is dry them out, and after which they burn well. So therefore it's not considering a muktzeh. So they ask, Teinach biyom tov. Do we understand that if you apply to festival, that those seed befitting for heat, beshabbat ma'ika lemeima. So how do you explain it on Shabbat? You're not allowed to burn in Shabbat and bake on Shabbat. And those seeds befitting for heating, so it's considering muktzeh. So how you give it to the animals on Shabbat? So the Rosh said that question is also applied to Rabbi Akiva, that allowed to prepare food for the animals on a festival. Because even according to him, you cannot do it by rabbinic law to prepare for the animals, so it's not befitting for use, and it's considering muktzeh. So they said, Rav Yosef responded and he said that the rule says a muktzeh on Shabbat, but the reason is because metaltelina lu agav rifta. Guess what we do? We carry them along with the bread, which means we place the date stones upon a loaf of bread and move them together with it. So Kiddush Shmuel, that's the opinion of Shmuel, who said, the Amar Shmuel, Ose Adam kol tzorko bepat. A person may perform all of his need in bread, which means as long as you have the bread edible, so you shouldn't be concerned about that bizayon ochlin, that they denigrated the bread. So by using that bread is not considered bizayon. But for sure it's a big discussion among the rabbis. It's a disputation between the Rishonim if that's correct or not. Because eventually you're taking the bread, think of it, and you don't use it for that sole purpose of bread. Anyway, Upliga de Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, מזמנין את הנוכרי בשבת, ואין מזמנין את הנוכרי ביום טוב. גזרה השם הירבה בשבילו. Say that you can bring a non-Jew for a meal on Shabbat, as you will certainly not cook for him on Shabbat. So it's permitted to give a non-Jew food that was prepared a day before. But you don't do that on a festival, because, again, you have to remember those days, the circumstances and how it's applied to our times. We are not there yet. But we said that this is prohibited as a preventive measure, lest he come to cook more for the non-Jews' sake. So, because remember, in Yom Tov, that's a sensitive part. Melachet Ochel Nefesh is specifically for those fellow Jews that in need. So Rav Achav Bar Yaakov Amar, Rabbi Yaakov disagreed, and he said, Afilu b'Shabbat namila, even Shabbat no, mishum shiurei chosot, because you have the wine remnants in the cup. So therefore, it's considering muktzeh. Yachet didan nami, so even as didan chazul tarnegolin, so you can use it also for the chickens. Didu nami chazul tarnegolin. Obviously, question: did we surah na'aninu? but then we have the idea of driving benefit. So we may not handle it at all. So how about ולטלטלינו אגב כעסה? So let's move it, the remain of the wine on the account of the cup. So again, דרך אגב, מי לא אמר רב המטלטלין קנונה? אבל נעשה that you may move a coal pan on the account of the ashes. אגב כתמי, אף על גב דאיקה עלי שברי עצים. Even though there are broken pieces of food on it that have no use, that we can move something that is muktzeh along with something else that one is permitted to handle. So the Gemarrah said, "Hatam lavisure ananinu, acha isure ananinu." Over there, the broken sticks are not items from which is prohibited to derive benefit, but here the remain of the wine, the cup is item which prohibited to derive benefit. So therefore, we go more stringent lechumra in that prohibition. Omar לרב אחא דיפתי לרבינה ולהווה כגרב של ראי. So we should be treated like a chamber part of feces which may be removed from the room because it's repulsive. אמר לה, וכי עושים גרב של ראי לכתחילה? We don't do it לכתחילה. So basically, Rabbi hold, according to Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Adbre Rabbi למר שמואל. Rabbi went to מר שמואל for a journey, ודרש מזמנים דרכים בשבת ומזמנים דרכים ביום טוב, גזירה שמי הרבה בישול. The same as we said. מראים אמר זוטרא, כי אבל מכלל לא נוכרי ביום טוב. אמרו לי, הנה לך מיילת תחיכן לה. טוב מותר. If it's sufficient for you, what we prepare is good. ולא תרחה ידך עד תחתידה לא תרחינן. We don't make an arduous effort, an extra effort for you, so therefore you don't have a violation for inviting them for the meal. So the big question is, what do you tell him and how you tell him? So the one who deals a lot with that is Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim Tav Kuf Yud Bet. Now we go other machlokot, other disputation between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel in regards to Hilchot Yom Tov. Beit Shammai אומרים, Beit Shammai say, לא יחם אדם חמין לרגליו. A person may not heat water on a festival in order to wash his feet. אלא אם כן ראויים לשתייה. Unless it's also fit for drinking, that they hold that kindling a fire on festival is permitted. ובית הלל מתירים, even that it's not befitting for drinking. עושה אדם מדורה ומתחמם כנגדה. Person may kindle a large fire and warm himself during Yom Tov at that place. So now the Gemarrah elaborates. Bei'lu, Hai medura man katan ela. They said that the fire, who told it? Divrei HaKoli, according to everyone, including Beit Shammai. Vishaneru leBeit Shammai, but it's different on the Beit Shammai ben ana'at kol gufo l'ana'at everchad. You have to differentiate between the joy of the entire body and benefit to a single limb. So, and we compare that to Ochel Nefesh. So that's the Rashi. Shita Mekubetzet goes a little differently. So Beit Shammai basically said that you can do it. Or Dilma Kebet Hillel Katan Ela. So they said that you're allowed to kindle fire only to wash your feet. So, and the same applied to a regular fire. Aval Beit Shammai lo shanu lei. So the question is, so Beit Hillel told that Beit Shammai did not differentiate between the two cases, and they permit kindling a fire on festival only for the purpose of preparing food. So the Gemara reconciled that question, and they said, Tashma Beit Shammai lo asa medura v'tchamim k'negda v'lel matirin. So Beit Shammai said a person should not leave the fire and stand and warm himself at the front of it, of there, or Beit Hillel allows it. So it means that the whole idea of kindling a fire, it's only according to opinion of Beit Hillel. Now another Mishnah with more halachot of Yom Tov. So the Mishnah said, שלושה דברים רבן גמליאל מחמיר כדברי בית שמאי. Rabban Gamliel was the Nesi Sanhedrin, the head of the Sanhedrin in Yavne. He was descendants of Hillel the elder, that he was a son of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel the elder. And that's a Gemarrah in Shabbat, page 15. So, but anyway, here there are three things he hold according to Beit Shammai. Let the Gemara explain why. Ein tomnin chachamim lechatchila b'yom tov. So he hold a person cannot lechatchila insulate hot food on a festival for Shabbat, but rather one ought to do so on the eve of the festival. Ve'en zokfin et hamnora b'yom tov. One may not set up a metal candle burn that fell on a festival. Ve'en ofin pitin gritzin, and one may not bake thick clothes on a festival. Ela dekikim, but only thin one. Omar Rabban Gamliel said, Mime'en shel Beit Abba, from the days of my father's household, לא היו אופים פיתים גריצין אלא רקיקים. They all never bake thick loaves on a festival, but only thin one. אמרו לו, the sages disagreed. And they said, מה נעשה לבית אביך שהוא מחמירים על עצמם? What can you do with your father's household that they are so stringent with themselves, yet ומקלים לכל ישראל, להיות אופים פיתים גריצין וחררים. But they allow, lenient with all the Jewish people, to allow them to bake thick loaves and cakes baked on coal. So that's the way Rashi explained. So now we zoom in this machloket between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, that implying directly in a Mishnah. In regard to setting up the water on a festival for the purpose of Shabbat. Hey Chedami, what is the real disputation? If before Yom Tov a person did Eiruvei Tavshilin in order to allow to cook, right, from festival to Shabbat, if that's the case, my tama de Beit Shammai, why Beit Shammai prohibited that hatmana? What's the reason? It's already fine. Because even you talk about baking, it's total work. By the Torah law, you're allowed to do it on a festival for the purpose of Shabbat by doing Eiruvei Tavshilin, the to cook food in advance. So for sure, hatmana, that it's only rabbinic that the date Eruv solve it. V'idelo anach Eiruvei Tavshilin, if you tell me did not prepare Eiruvei Tavshilin, so my tamad de Beit Hillel. So what's the rationale of the lenient ruling of Beit Hillel? Amar Rav Huna לעולם אין מלאך. You should say that שלא הניח עירוב תבשילין. You have to say that a person did not prepare עירוב תבשילין. But Beit Hillel hold וכדי חייב. So they said that the sages never permit him for his basic sustenance. שרו לרבנן, sages allowed. ורב הונא לטעמי, רב הונא have the reason, and he said, דאמר רב הונא, מי שלא נח עירובי תבשילין, אופים לו פת אחת. If someone not prepare עירוב תבשילין on the eve of festival, others may bake one loaf of bread for him, ומבשלים לו קדרה אחת, and cook for him one pot of food. 22, ומדליקים לו את הנר, and they kindle the lamp for him. So according to the Rif and the Rambam, you're allowed to kindle the on a festival for the purpose of Shabbat, even without Eiruvei Tavshilin. That's a Beit Yosef or Chaim Tafkuk Kav Zayin. And he said, and he doesn't use one ner echad because he's allowed to have many. Others said that it's only one ner. And the big question is if it's enough to do Eiruvei Tavshilin or not. Tosfot here dilute that. Anyway, משום רבי יצחק אמרו אף צולים לו דג קטן, they also roast a small fish for him. תנא מאחד משלו נניח עירוב תבשילין, ואפילו פד אחד, ונותנים לו גדרה אחד, ומנקים לו תנר, ומחמים לו קיתון אחד, וצולים לו דג קטן. Okay, this is all preparation for even roasted a fish for him, because he forget. רבא אמר לעולם שניח, you have to say that he prepared תבשילין, to cook food. But even though בית שמאי prohibited to do הטמנה on Yom Tov for Shabbat, ושנה הטמנה, דמוכר מילה דדתא לשבת כעבית. But here it's different, because here when it's evident that he is acting by insulating the hot food, acting with Shabbat in mind, and not for the festival. So Beit Shammai view this as a desecration of the sanctity of the festival. So he said, Eiti ve'abaye, Hananya omer, Beit Shammai אומרים מנופים אליו כן עירב בפת. The same idea. ואין מבשלים אליו כן עירב בתבשיל. ואין תומנין, אלא אם כן אלו מים חמים תמין ביום טוב. So, meaning each עירוב need independent way. היו לו חנים תמונין, but if you have those insulated food in advance, before Yom Tov, מהאביד, he can do it insulating from Yom Tov to Shabbat, ואף על גב דמוכי חמילתא, דהדבר לשבת כאביד. Even if it's evident that he's acting with Shabbat in mind. So in other words, you see here that even according to Hananya, who followed the rule of Beit Shammai, it is permitted to insulate hot food on a festival for Shabbat. So since Abaye rejected what Rava said, he goes in different direction. אלא אמר אביי כגון שערב לזה ולא ערב לזה. He prepared the עירוב תבשילין, the cooked food, for with the bread for the purpose of cooking and baking, but he didn't do it. Didn't this cook food before festival for the sake of the עירוב of Shabbat. וחנניה, and this opinion follow Rabbi Hananya, ואליבא דבית שמאי, follow Beit Shammai with Rabban Gamliel household being stringent upon themselves in this regard. So basically the Mishnah follow Hananya according to Beit Shammai, that we're not allowed to do atmana on a festival for the purpose of Shabbat if he did not use at the eve of the festival those hot measurement in advance. Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 5:12. One may not prepare food on a festival for dogs. That's basically the Rabbi Yossi Aglili. Although Rabbi Akiva disagree with him, and the halacha is generally ruling according to Rabbi Akiva's opinion, when he disagree with his colleagues, in this case, the unattributed Mishnah is follow Rabbi Yossi Aglili. So one may handle food in order to give it to animals, but one may not carry it from one domain to another, even if by doing so he will violate only rabbinic prohibition. That's basically both the Vilna Gaon and the Baal HaTanya, Shulchan Aruch Harav, both agree. However, Hasidim and Litvaks agree together. However, it is permitted to prepare extra food for people even if he intends to give the leftovers to animals. עושה אדם כל צורכו בפת, that's Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 171. The halacha is according to the opinion of Shmuel that one may perform all his needs with bread as well as other food, provided that he does nothing to render the bread repulsive and inedible. One may not do anything to food that will possibly or definitely cause it to become inedible. Similarly, one may not treat bread in contemptuous manner. So again, that's one of those sensitive halachot when it's come to bread. How about chimum mayim lerchitza, heating water for washing? Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 5:11. It is permitted to heat water on a festival in order to wash one's hands, but not his whole body. It is permitted to wash the entire body of an infant in water heated on a festival if it was heated for a different purpose, even if one added more for the sake of the child. One may wash his entire body in water heated before the festival, but the sages decreed that one should not do so in bathhouse, and the custom is to be stringent in all cases, that the Ramah. Now, also the Mishnah Berurah said, regard to water of a mikveh, of a ritual bath, some permit one to add hot water for the sake of immersion, whereas others permitted for the festival itself only by means of a non-Jew. How about medurah, kindling a fire on a festival? It is permitted to light a fire in order to warm oneself by it, like a cold window. Some say, that's the Ramah, that one may not light one's oven for heating in the winter unless his food is solidifying in the cold, whereas others permitted. But the Chayei Adam said that even though who rules stringently permitted by means if you have a non-Jew that does that.
Boyachem leshuloim malachai yeshuloim malachai